Okay, we are live. We are live. We're going to try this out today. Good afternoon, lovely people. All right. Sitting here on this Sunday afternoon, this glorious day in Newark, New Jersey. Feeling good to do a live video. I'm going to be reading off of the Perennial Philosophy, the summary that I did by Aldous Huxley. Okay, I've uploaded some of the audio to the videos, but we're going to do a live right now. Just testing it out, kind of feeling the waters. So I'm going to go right into chapter 2. And I'm going to, since we're live, I'm going to give more dialogue on what my opinion is about some of the stuff that we're breaking down. Okay. Chapter 2 is the nature of the ground. The divine ground of all existence is a spiritual, absolute, ineffable, indescribable in terms of rambling discursive thoughts, but in certain circumstances, susceptible, emotionally capable of being directly experienced and realized by the human being. The last end of man, the ultimate reason for human existence, is unitive knowledge of the divine ground. The knowledge that can only come to those who prepare to die to self and so make room for God. Number 3 is the absolute ground of all existence has a personal aspect. There is an incarnation of God in every human body who possesses the same qualities of character as the personal God, but who exhibits them under the limitations necessarily imposed by the confinement within a material body, born into the world at a given moment in time. When God is regarded as exclusively immanent, legalism and external practices are abandoned, and there is a concentration on the inner light. God is immanent as well as transcendent, suprapersonal as well as personal. Who is God? He who is. The purpose of all words is to illustrate the meaning of an object. When they are heard, they should enable the hearer to understand this meaning. And this is according to 4 categories. This is all based off the Perennial Philosophy, based off of Aldous Huxley's research. The 4 categories are of substance, number 1, of activity, number 2, of quality, 3 and 4 is relationship. Those are the 4 categories where words should explain the meaning of something. It was from the nameless that heaven and earth sprang. The named is but the mother that rears the 10,000 creatures each after its kind. Truly, only he that rids himself forever of desire can see the secret essence. He that has never rid himself of desire can only see outcomes. That's a quote by Lao Tzu. Mind affects its body in 4 ways. Subconsciously, which is physical intelligence. Consciously, deliberate acts of will. Subconsciously, the reaction upon the physical organism, the body. And then consciously or subconsciously, the supernormal manifestations. The bodies of human beings are affected by good and bad states of their minds. The ground in which the diverse and time-bound psyche is rooted is a simple, timeless awareness. By making ourselves pure in heart and poor in spirit, we can discover and be identified with this awareness. In the spirit, we do not only have, but are the unitive knowledge of the divine ground. God in time is grounded. God in time is grounded in the eternal now of the modeless Godhead. It is in the Godhead that things, lives, and minds have their being. It is through God that they have their becoming, a becoming whose goal and purpose is to return to the eternity of the ground. The simple, absolute, and immutable or unchangeable mysteries of the divine truth are hidden in the superluminous darkness of that silence which reveals in secret. For this darkness, though not easily understood, of deepest obscurity, is yet radically clear. And though beyond touch and sight, it is more than fills our unseeing minds of the splendor of the fantastic beauty. God is no thing. God is nothing. God is not a what, but a that. The ground can be denoted as being there, but not defined as having qualities. Direct knowledge of the ground cannot be had except by union, and union can be achieved only by the annihilation of the self-regarding ego, which is the barrier separating the thou from the that. That was deep. That was good. That was chapter 2, the nature of the ground. So what this means to me is that the nature of the ground is what the other brother talked about in the book Science of Meditation. It's more of it's a verb, it's an activity, it's a doing. It's not really a thing as being something tangible. It's something more diverse than something that's tangible. Now, when you name something, it has to have certain qualities so you can give a definition. But when you're talking about the divine ground, there is no name that you can give it. So he gives it the ground, the divine ground. Some people call it God, the absolute. He calls it the divine ground. And the nature of that is pretty much nothingness. No things can fit into that. And that's who we truly are. That's where we have to become one with, is that divine ground. That divine light in us is within that divine ground, which is also within us. All right, so that's what I got from that. Let's go into chapter 3. Do you want to keep going? Should we keep going? All right, let's keep going. All right, chapter 3, personality, sanctity, and divine incarnation. Okay, man's obsessive consciousness of and insistence on being a separate self is the final and most formidable, terrifying obstacle to the unitive knowledge of God. To be a self is the original sin, and to die to self in feeling, will, and intellect is the final and all-inclusive virtue. All right, so they say you have to die to live. Let me read that again, because this is in quotations. Man's obsessive consciousness of and insistence on being a separate self is the final and most terrifying obstacle to the unitive knowledge of God. To be a self is the original sin, and to die to self in feeling, will, and intellect is the final and all-inclusive virtue. So we have to let go and die of that personal self that we hold on to. Ask yourself this question. Is there joy, ease, and lightness in what you're doing? If there isn't, then time is covering up the present moment and life is perceived as a burden or a struggle. Man is nothing but a bundle or collection of different perceptions, which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in a perpetual flux and movement. By Hume. That's a quote. Man's final end, the purpose of his existence, is to love, know, and be unified with the indwelling and absolute Godhead. Man's final end, the purpose of his existence, is to love, know, and be unified with the indwelling and absolute Godhead. Man's temptations do not have to be succumbed to. People can and do resist them, can and do refuse to identify themselves with what it would be all too easy and natural for them to be, can and do become better and quite other than their own selves. The saint is one who knows that every moment in our human life is a moment of crisis. For at every moment we are called upon to make an all-important decision, to choose between the way that leads to death and spiritual darkness and the way that leads towards life and light, between interests exclusively temporal and the eternal order, between our personal will and the will of some projections of our personality, and then the will of God. Monotheism is a one-pointed knowledge of God. The word knowledge, consciousness, and awareness is pretty much the same thing. And that's is in the knower according to the mode of the knower. So your awareness is pretty much based on the mode that you're in. The saints are all incessantly preoccupied with one subject, spiritual reality, and the means by which they and their fellows can come to the unitive knowledge of that reality. It is in virtue of his absorption in God, and just because he has not identified his being with the inborn and acquired elements of his private personality, that the saint is able to exercise his non-coercive and beneficial influence on individuals and even on whole societies. All right, that's the saint. That's the GOD. That is the meaning. That's where I'm moving towards, is to get this information out there, live this information, and give it out to the people, and pretty much move with the spirit. Here's a quote in the Bhagavad Gita. When goodness grows weak, when evil increases, I make myself a body. In every age, I come back to deliver the holy, to destroy the sin of the sinner, to establish righteousness. He who knows the nature of my task and my holy birth is not reborn. When he leaves this body, he comes to me, flying from fear, from lust, from anger. He hides in me, his refuge and safety. Burnt clean in the blaze of my being, in me many find their home. Now this is in the Bhagavad Gita. This is deep, because he said, when goodness grows weak, when evil increases, I make myself a body. So we make ourselves this body. And then we reawaken, we reacquaint ourselves with our higher self, and then we wake up. But we were born and we came into this flesh for a reason. And then once you can release yourself from this fear, this flesh, this lust, then you return back home where you came. All right? Souls which have come to the unitive knowledge of God are almost nothing in themselves and all in God. The biography of a saint or avatar is valuable only insofar as it throws light upon the means by which, in the circumstance of a particular human life, the I is purged away so as to make room for the divine not I, or the I am, I me concept. So you have to, the saint is the one that does away with the little I and focuses only on the big I. The I am presence, not the I me presence. All right, Paul and John wrote about the eternal not I of Christ rather than the historical I. Each in his own way stressed that element in the life of Jesus, Yahshua, in which, because it is more than personal, all persons can participate. Esoteric Christianity is a process forever unfolding in the heart of man. I believe I'm in all religions, but esoteric Christianity is probably the main one that I hold on to. Buddhism, heavy influenced by Buddhism as well. Time for the Buddhas and may honest is beginningless and innumerable universes, every one of them supporting sentient beings of every possible variety, are born, evolve, decay, and die, only to repeat the same cycle again and again, until the final, inconceivably remote consummation when every sentient being in all the world shall have won to deliverance out of time into an eternal suchness or Buddhahood. So we keep being born over and over again until we figure this shit out, so we can elevate to that point where we're not fearful anymore. We're not attached to this body. For the Christ of the Gospels, lawyers seem further from the kingdom of heaven, more hopelessly impervious to reality than almost any other class of human beings, except the rich. I thought that was interesting. For the Christ of the Gospels, the lawyers are the ones, because they manipulate law and perception. There must be imitation of Christ before there can be identification with the Father. And there must be essential identity or likeness between the human spirit and the God who is spirit in order that the idea of imitating the earthly behavior of the incarnate Godhead should ever cross anybody's mind. All right, it's another one. There must be the imitation of Christ before there can be identification with the Father. So you have to be able to imagine what this higher self is, this power is. Every human being can become an avatar by adoption, but not by his unaided efforts. He or she must be shown the way, and he or she must be aided by divine grace. The men and women may be thus instructed and helped. The Godhead assumes the form of an ordinary human being who has to earn deliverance and enlightenment in the way that is prescribed by the divine nature of things, namely by charity and by total dying to self and to a total one-pointed awareness. Thus, enlightened, the avatar can reveal the way of enlightenment to others and help them actually become what they already potentially are. So you see, I'm on this path of righteousness, and I'm doing the research, doing the studying to get to that point to where I'm able to transcend this personal self into the universal self and become a vehicle to teach and enlighten everyone else. That was chapter 3. Should I keep going? We're going live. We are live. We're going through it. I'm feeling good. Let's do it. Let's do it one more. Let's do chapter 4. God in the world. That art thou. Behold but one in all things. God within and God without. There is a way to reality in and through the soul, and there is a way to reality in and through the world. Whether the ultimate goal can be reached by followers either of these ways to the exclusion of the other is to be doubted. The third best and hardest way is that which leads to the divine ground simultaneously in the perceiver and that which is perceived. So it's different ways to get there to this truth, this essence. You can do it through the soul, do it through the world, or you can do a combination of both. All right, so here's a quote by Hong Po, ancient Chinese master, wisdom. When followers of Zen fail to go beyond the world of their senses and thoughts, all their doings and movements are of no significance. But when the senses... Hold up. I got to turn this phone off while I'm going live. All right. I'm going to turn the phone off to give respect to the people. Let's start over with this quote. This is a really, really good quote that I got directly from the book. But the book, he got it from Hong Po. Okay, you can look him up, Huang-Po, P-O. When followers of Zen fail to go beyond the world of their senses and thoughts, all their doings and movements are of no significance. But when the senses and thoughts are annihilated, all the passages to the universal mind are blocked, and no entrance is possible. The original mind is to be recognized along with the working of the senses and thoughts. Only it does not belong to them, nor yet is it independent of them. Do not build up your views upon the senses and thoughts. Do not base your understanding upon your senses and thoughts. But at the same time, do not seek the mind away from your senses and thoughts. Do not try to grasp reality by rejecting your senses and thoughts. When you are neither attached to nor detached from them, then you enjoy your perfect, unobstructed freedom. Then you have your seat of enlightenment. That is so deep. That is so deep, okay? And I say this all the time. I'm so thankful that I'm getting this knowledge from our Creator and it's manifesting through me. I am not my thoughts. I am not my actions. I am not my intellect. I am not my body. I am not my emotions, okay? And this is the transformation that I've been going through. So to hear this from somebody so ancient, so far back, say the same exact things that I'm learning now. And basically it is, do not identify with any of these thoughts or feelings or sensations. Your sensations are reactions to the external stimuli that comes in through nature. So when you have your 5 senses and you feel something, that's just your reaction of how your body is to this stimuli. Okay, and it's emotions attached to that. But you are none of that. The feelings and desires, the feelings and desires that we are essentially within the doer is the only real thing, and that's the Atman. That's what connects us to Brahman. The divine light goes through the doer, which goes through our feelings and desires. So we have to control them, but we cannot identify with our thoughts and our senses. Very powerful quote. All right, let's keep going. What the poet and painter see and try to record for us is actually there, waiting to be apprehended by anyone who has the right kind of faculties. Such perceptions can't be had by all perceivers. Knowledge is a function of being. He says that over and over again. Knowledge is a function of being, but the thing known is independent of the mode and the nature of the knower. So if the nature of the knower is not there, if the being is not there, you won't know it. You won't understand it. You won't get it. To discover the kingdom of God exclusively within oneself is easier than to discover it not only there, but also in the outer world of minds and things and living creatures. It is easier because the heights within reveal themselves to those who are ready to exclude from their view all that lies without. Okay, so you can get this knowledge and information, discover the kingdom of God within exclusively when you're not dealing with anybody, not dealing with the world, like a monk in the castle somewhere in the building. You're around other monks, and you get this knowledge, and you're so righteous, but you're by yourself. You're not in the world. You have to be able to blend the two. That's what he's talking about. Where there is exclusive concentration on the heights within, temptations and distractions are avoided, and there is general denial and suppression. But when the hope is to know God inclusively, to realize the divine ground in the world as well as in the soul, temptations and distractions must not be avoided, but submitted to and used as opportunities for advance. There must be no suppression or outward turning activities, but a transformation of them so that they become sacramental. That is the key to it right there. You have to embrace everything. Everything is part of the Most High's teaching you and showing you. Don't suppress any of it. Flush all of that shit out of your system. Zen has always specialized in nonsense as a means of stimulating the mind to go forward to that which is beyond the sense, because the senses are not who you really are. There's another quote by Hung Po. This dude, Hung Po, was the truth when it came to this. When no mind is sought after by a mind that is making a particular object of thought, there is only testimony of silence. It goes beyond thinking. We as separate individuals must not try to think it, but rather permit ourselves to be thought by it. Let's say that again. When no mind is sought after by a mind that is making a particular object of thought, there is only testimony of silence. It goes beyond thinking. We as separate individuals must not try to think it, but rather permit ourselves to be thought by it. Let's just let that marinate. You can listen to this whenever you choose and let that marinate within. I might keep going because the Spirit's telling me to keep going. Conformity to the will of God, submission, docility to the leadings of the Holy Ghost, which can mean different things. Conformity to the perfect way, refusing to have preferences and cherished opinions, keeping the eyes open so that dreams may stop and truth reveal itself. The goal is to work with nature so as to produce material and social conditions in which individuals may realize the way on every level from the physiological up to the spiritual. So you have to go through these chambers, and the conformity to the will of God, the submission, the docility to the leadings of the Holy Ghost. People get concerned about that the way that's read, but it's the truth, because you have to let go and be able to listen and receive, as opposed to always trying to think about something. And I'm very thoughtful, but I realize there's a limit. I am not my intellect, once again. All right, so now the next chapter is chapter 5. We're going to keep going because this chapter is pretty important on this Sunday, this lovely Sunday. What I am going to do, I'm going to take a quick less than a minute break, get some music going, get the charger for the computer so it doesn't fade out on us. All right, so give me 1 second. You want to go back? Are you still watching? Yes. All right, I'm gonna get the charger. So I got the music on. We're gonna keep it on old school. Let's see. All right, so chapter 5. Chapter 5 is about charity. Okay, charity. What is charity? How does that play into the perennial philosophy, this divine ground that we want to get back to? Okay, let's go. Love is flawless, dependable, infallible. Love is infallible. See, what I do is when I read, sometimes I read old books and the words, I got to give another definition and try to apply it to today. So a lot of times when you see my Damonnotes, it'll have 4 or 5 different words next to the original words. So you can kind of use those words to help. Love is infallible. It has no errors, for all errors are the want of love. We can only love what we know, and we can never know completely what we do not love. Love is a mode of knowledge. Comes when the love is sufficiently intense. The knowledge becomes unitive knowledge, and so takes on the quality of infallibility, reliability. I want to get back to. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so charity is the highest and the most divine form of love. Ambiguity in vocabulary leads to confusion in thought. All right, so charity is the highest and most divine form of love. Okay, charity is disinterested, seeking no reward, nor allowing itself to be diminished by any return of evil for its good. God is to be loved for himself, not for his gifts and persons and things are to be loved for God's sake, because they are temples of the Holy Ghost. Learn to look with an equal eye upon all beings, seeing the one self in all. That's true charity, which is the highest form of love, is seeing yourself in everyone else. The second distinguishing mark of charity is that, unlike the lower forms of love, it is an emotion. It begins with an act of will and is consummated as a purely spiritual awareness, a unitive love knowledge of the essence of its objects. The worth of love does not consist in high feelings, but in detachment and patience under trials for the sake of God whom we love. The nature of charity, or the love knowledge of God, is the highest form of love of God. It is an immediate spiritual intuition by which the knower, known, and knowledge are made one. The knower, the known, and the actual knowledge are made one. Pay attention. Here are characteristics of charity. Charity is disinterested and seeking no reward. All right, disinterestedness means that there is neither greed for personal advantage nor fear for personal loss or punishment. So you're just genuinely like love someone, or you love something, or you genuinely you have no attachment to the outcome. Charity is not an emotion; it is an act of will. Tranquility means that there is neither craving nor aversion, which is animosity, but a steady will to conform to the divine way on every level of existence, and a steady awareness of the divine suchness and what should be one's own relation to it. So it's a peacefulness within us, but it's not a craving, but it's a steady act of will to conform to the divine ways. All right, number 3, charity is humility. Okay, what is humility? Humility means that there is no critical and no glorification of the ego or any projected alter ego at the expense of others, who are recognized as having the same weaknesses and faults. but also the same capacity for transcending them in a unitive knowledge of God as oneself has. All right, so humility is pretty much saying we're in the same boat. Now, what I choose to do with it, what you choose to do with it is on us. But I'm not critical. I'm not judging you. I'm very humble. I understand it's a choice. You're not, certain things are blocking you from experiencing this, which has happened to me. I'm unlocking those blockages. That's the whole point of this. It is plain that no distinct object, whatever that pleases the will, can be God. And for that reason, the will is to be united with him. It must empty itself, cast away every disorderly affection of the desire, every satisfaction it may distinctively have, high and low, temporal and spiritual, so that purified and cleansed from all unruly satisfactions, joys and desires, it may be wholly occupied with all its affections in loving God. For if the will can in any way comprehend God and be united with him, it cannot be through any capacity of the desire, but only by love, and as all the delight, sweetness, and joy of which the will is sensible is not love. It follows that none of these pleasing impressions can be the adequate means of uniting the will of God. Now, once again, this is saying a lot of the way he puts it is interesting, but you have to, all of those desires, those personal desires that are attached to the body, you have to let go of. And it's just that only one desire should exist, and that's the desire to love genuinely, to have charity for God within yourself and within everyone else. Spiritual progress is always spiral and reciprocal. Peace from distractions and emotional agitations is the way to charity. And charity, or unitive love knowledge, is the way to the highest peace of God. I have that in big, black, bold letters. So let me read that again. Spiritual progress is always spiral and reciprocal. Peace from distractions and emotional agitations is the way to charity, or unitive love knowledge of God, the way to the highest peace of God. Humility is a necessary condition of the highest form of love. And the highest form of love makes possible the consummation of humility and a total self-denial. Feelings may be of service as motives of charity, but charity has its beginnings in the will. So once again, he talks about the will, which that's another book that we're going to break down. That's pretty awesome. That's going to help everybody because it's helping me. The will is deep. So this is saying that you have to use your will power to identify and to control your feelings. Feelings may be the service of motives of charity, but charity has its beginnings in the will. Will to peace and humility in oneself. Will to patience and kindness towards one's friends. Will to that disinterested love of God, which asks nothing and refuses nothing. The distinguishing marks of charity are disinterestedness, tranquility, and humility. So when you talk about charity, you talk about disinterestedness. You're not concerned about the outcome. Tranquility is the peacefulness, knowing that you are one with everybody else. That's true charity. And humility is the same thing. I am humble because I understand that you are me and I am you. Our present economic, social, and international arrangements are based in large measure upon organized lovelessness and confusion. That's why we're acting the way we're acting, especially now with this coronavirus, COVID-19. Everybody's so attached to their reactions in their body and their historical senses and their reaction emotionally and not thinking clearly. And the more I detach from that and identify with my true self, the more I realize that it's a bigger picture. It's a much, much bigger picture going on. All right. So look, we're going to slow it down now. That's the end of chapter 5. I'm going to do some more videos this afternoon, a little bit later. I may come back live again for those that want to continue. Peace and blessings, family.